Please welcome Patrick House. Bow tie, fro, sweater, it's the whole package, ladies.
So, my name is Patrick. I study parasitic mind control and kind of mental illness and the potential link between the two. So, in front of you on the screen, you see two objects, and if you include me, three. And my question to you is, which of these three objects and how do they influence your behavior? So you have a beautiful woman, you have a black cat, and you have me, a presenter, in front of you on stage. So it's very superficial, my version of how I influence your behavior, right? You guys are all sitting, you guys are all facing this direction, you're kind of inhibiting your conversations that you would normally have. But this isn't very interesting. We don't consider this to be mind control, because somewhere intervening between me and your behavior, there is will and free will. The woman, Maggie Gyllenhaal, star of Secretary, good movie. She, if you are an able-bodied man or a so inclined woman, might be stirring certain parts of your body that your neighbor might find uncomfortable. But again, we don't want to call this actually mind control, right? This is just kind of reflex. Somewhere between her and you, there's presumably willpower. My argument, my talk, is about how the black cat is actually influencing quite a bit of your behavior. And so the argument is premised on the following, that your personality is an accumulation of the things that you prefer, of what you are attracted to. What you did in the past, what you will do in the future, is a combination of these types of attractions. And if something somehow can alter what it is that you like to do, can alter what it is that you're attracted to, this is a potentially terrifying thing. So this is the Google autocomplete for parasite makes you, right? And if you are a rat and a parasite makes you love cats, this is bad, this is suicidal. If you're a human and a parasite makes you love cats, what does this mean? What does this mean for us? And mostly because we're no longer eaten by cats. It maybe just makes us crazy. So there's a kind of existentially damning theory that some of you may have heard of, that you are mostly, well, not yourself. What this means is that if you took a blend of your body and counted up all the different types of cells, you would have 10 to 1 bacteria to human cells. You would have 10 to 1 non-self to self. But we don't really find a problem in this. We see these headlines recently, and you just go about your day, right? This isn't really damning, again, for free will. But if you actually look in this same body blend, you'll see we also have quite a bit of parasites. So parasites really enjoy going to the GI tract. They go to your lungs. This is a map of the 40 most common parasites that humans are prone to and where they go. So they go to the lymph nodes, they go to the eyes, they go to the nose. But what's interesting is when they go to the brain. So there's something unique about the brain, which is that you're going to find a lot less non-self organisms in your brain. What this means, maybe this can excite some dualists in the room, but basically the brain is mostly self, right? And because the blood-brain barrier is actually incredibly good at isolating the brain from the rest of the body. And what this means is that very rarely do things get into the brain, but once they do, they can be quite damning. So rabies, you certainly don't want rabies, you're going to die. You don't want to go swimming in any body of water in Africa. You'll get Anopheles and acanthamoeba, which kill you pretty quickly. You can get tapeworm, but it's incredibly rare. But what we're going to focus on, and why I think toxo is actually really interesting, is that it's one of few parasites that actually gets into your brain and doesn't kill you. So it gets into your brain, it sits there for your lifetime. And this is rare in this kind of world of, well, what do we consider to be self and what do we consider to be agency? So what is toxo? This is I don't know if it's actually less or more informative than Brad's slide, but basically it's a cat, it's a rat, and toxo has to get from one cat to another cat. So it's evolutionary pressure. It can only sexually reproduce in cats. So it has to use an intermediate host because it doesn't itself have legs, and it's kind of evolved this life cycle to infect intermediate hosts, infect rodents, infect mice or rats, and then when they get eaten again by another cat, this completes the life cycle. So what does it look like? This is a single toxo. It's a 3D recreation of them. Size, approximately 1 micron by 7 microns. For scale, that is, the classic human hair. What it looks like when it kind of forms little clumps. So you have a single toxoparasite, but once it gets in the brain, they actually kind of glom together in this nice little rosette cyst. And you get these cysts living for the entire life of the host in their brain, in their central nervous system. What can that do to animals? So again, looking at this life cycle, you see a few days across the top. So if you infect the animals with the mice with toxo, so this is a toxo that's been genetically engineered to express firefly gene luciferase. So basically what you're looking at is a firefly mateship courtship ritual inside a mouse's stomach. But we can track the parasite with this, right? So and we can see that within 2 weeks, about 2 weeks after, it moves from the periphery to the brain and exclusively stays there for the rest of the animal's life. Around day 21, it switches to a different stage in its life cycle, and we can no longer track it. But we know that about day 28, this can't be a coincidence, right? 28 days later is exactly when the mind control happens. So what does this look like? What does the mind control look like? Again, remember, it has to get from one cat to another cat. And if you could somehow make the actual intermediate host, if you could somehow make the mouse more likely to get eaten by a cat, this would be incredibly useful. So what it looks like is if you put a rodent down here in a little circular quadrant and you put cat urine on one side, rabbit urine on the other, most of these animals will be innately afraid. They'll spend most of their time away from the cat urine. If these animals have toxo, if these mice and rats have this parasite, they actually spend more time close to the cat urine. They're actually attracted to the cat urine, which of course helps the parasite. So what does this look like? There are two, yeah. So I included those for all you cat ladies in the audience. So what does this look like? There are two main themes, I think, in mammalian life, sex and death, right? You want to have sex and you want to do this, and you do not want to do this while you die, or you don't want to do this before you die. It might be okay during. So what does this look like? That's fear, right? A mouse encounters a cat, he's afraid, he runs away. And we can actually look in the brain and see what's happening at the moment of fear in these animals. So if you look in the brain, you get kind of a color means activity in that region of the brain. You get the cat odor, you get activity in the olfactory bulb, which means they smelled something. It jumps straight to the amygdala, which is responsible for really quick, really innate emotional responses to things. It goes to eventual output, which means the animal is afraid. So what happens if you expose an animal to a female rat? So of course it's a male rat, expose it to a female rat. What happens? Lust, love, right? They're attracted. What does attraction look like? Well, this is supposed to be green, but basically you can see a parallel kind of activity coursing through this pathway. Similar, innate, quick response. You want to be really, really quick if you're either going to have sex with something or run away with it. Sex and death, reproduction, predation. So what does it look like when we have one of these animals that's exposed to a cat that has toxo? So what does toxo actually do in the brain to make these animals attracted to cat odors? Well, again, when toxo, these animals are attracted to the odor, and if we look in their brains at that moment, we can see, well, you can't see it right now, but this region is lit up. This region is green. The region that used to be exclusively for the sexual attraction to females is now active. So this is plausibly the mechanism. How does it do this? We have no idea. We do know a few things. We know that it increases dopamine levels in the brain. We know that it has the gene to do this. We don't know whether or not that's the actual causal mechanism, but we know it can. And we know that this is really interesting. If you give a dopamine antagonist, like some haloperidol, an antipsychotic that you use to give to schizophrenics to cure their psychosis, it actually reverses the toxoplasma behavior in rodents. So what does this mean for us? That's basically the extent of our knowledge on the animal side. What does it mean for humans? So we are ancillary hosts, right? But we can get toxo too. How do we get toxo? The eggs, the little toxo that's out in the world, basically you can get it through two ways. One, cats, the domestication of cats, right? You have litter boxes, they shit all over it. And when people clean the shit of a litter box, they can get toxo. If you've ever heard that pregnant women are supposed to stay away from cat boxes, this is why, because it can be really bad for the baby if the baby gets toxo. One of the most common ways of getting it, though, is actually through livestock and eating raw meat. So a study went to a supermarket in the UK, bought all of the meat in the entire supermarket, went back, tested it all, 38% of it had toxo in it. So what happens, though, if you cook meat, you'll be fine. But raw meat, i.e. the French guy steak tartare, the Brazilian barbecue, that type of thing, raw meat is how most people actually get toxo. What does this mean? Well, up to 2 billion people, about a third of people on this planet, have toxo in their brains. And this is a heat map of every statistic that we know of, every country that's had toxo testing. And you can see some of these countries, it's ridiculous. Brazil, 60%. France is somewhere between 50 and 60. Again, they're cultures that encourage you to eat raw meat. And this is probably where these cultures are picking up a lot of this parasite. But if you'll notice, US, 20%, which means 40 people in this room have it, if there are 200, right? And even countries that have very, very little and low amounts of toxo at least have 10%. That's a ridiculously high amount of people in this planet that actually have this parasite.